Today, I'm excited to welcome Bob Pilkington, a trombonist, composer, arranger, and educator whose work has shaped the world of original music for decades. As a professor at Berklee College of Music since 1982, Bob has not only inspired countless students but also contributed to the evolution of jazz with projects like the Jazz Composers Alliance, Fusion Nouveau, and the Continuum Jazz Brass Band. With a career that bridges avant-garde jazz, big band, and fusion and beyond, Bob continues to push musical boundaries and inspire creativity in all who hear him. So, Bob, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. So, Bob, one of the first things I wanted to talk about was, you are a true jazz musician and and a true jazz educator. I was privileged to study with you and take your afro-pop ensemble about 20 years ago at Berklee, which was so much fun.
That's a
Um,
great. Yeah.
so the first thing I wanted to ask you was if you could travel in history, and see any jazz performance, who do you wish you had gotten the chance to see? What would you ask them? That sort of thing. Anyone come to mind?
Oh yeah, many come to mind. Probably, I think the first one I would want to see would be John Coltrane, like in the '60s, late '50s, early '60s, um, where he was really like exploring a lot of new vistas. Um, uh, one of the albums that has inspired me over the years is Ascension, where he's really exploring into what was then, I think, considered avant-garde. But some of the techniques he was using are not all that avant-garde today. They're mainstream. So things like heterophonic unisons and group improvisation. Those
What are the
are.
classic? Would you want the classic quartet?
Um, yeah, well, yeah, of course, yeah. But if you're going to include that, you might as well include the Miles Davis sextet too. You know. Um, but I mean, the thing that drew me into Coltrane was late Coltrane first, and then I went backwards from there. Um, I sort of came of age in the late '60s, early '70s, which was a time of uh, moving into new, uh, experimenting with new ideas, and to a certain extent throwing out older ideas, kind of misguided, but we came back around to it. So coming of age during that period in the culture, uh, I was of that thing. I was like, I want to explore new ideas and new ways of doing things, and so throw out all the rules. And then once you get out there, you discover, well, wait a minute, you got to have some sort of way of organizing things, some way of creating some structure, and then gradually you go like, oh wait, that guy Duke Ellington was pretty damn good,
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
you talk about Coltrane. I like to think about Coltrane as three different lives. The early stuff,
mm,
then, the classic quartet, and then the
mm,
avant-garde stuff, which is actually interesting that you mentioned John Coltrane because in 2005, I saw you do a John Coltrane tribute concert at Berklee with my teacher, John Thomas. He just passed, rest his
yeah,
soul. Do you
yeah,
remember that concert?
I do. I actually, Bill Pierce was on it, and
Yes.
I forget the name of the guitar player.
No, John Thomas, guitarist.
Yeah, right. Bass player. Um,
Ron Motti.
Ron. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And was it Ron Savage?
Greg Scroloni on the drums. He was a student at the
All right.
time. Yeah.
Well, I remember part of it. I remember playing the tunes and getting to play with John and Bill Pierce was like very inspiring. It's like you play better when you play with cats like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, John comped on the guitar very similar to McCoy Tyner.
mm,
Do you remember that? Do you like feeling that sort of energy in a sense with the way he played?
yeah, it was. I'd say aggressive, but not in a negative sense of the word. Uh, um, Assertive, maybe that's a better word, and sort of, yeah, challenged you to create a dialogue.
Sure.
Um,
And have to maybe phrase a little bit differently too, right?
of course, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and you speaking of John and Berkeley, you've had the opportunity to be at Berkeley, which is the they call the #1 contemporary jazz school in the world. Are you most grateful in your career for the position you've maintained there? What would you say you're most grateful for in your journey this far?
Well, yeah, that would be definitely one of them. Uh, I first arrived there as a full-time student 50 years ago, actually, fall of 74. I had also been there for the summer program in 73, and that sort of blew my head. And so I had to come back. I quit my other school and then came up here.
You
Um,
mean before working at Berklee, working somewhere else? Or you
I was
mean
talking
going
about
to
as a
school?
student. As a
Oh, the
student,
student. Yeah. Okay.
then I started teaching in 1982, and the colleagues there. I mean, in my department, I had Herb Pomeroy, Ted Pease, Greg Hopkins, Ken Pullig, um, and when you have those people sitting around talking about stuff, it's like you soak a lot of it in, and became part of me then too.
Are you still as inspired today being there as you were, maybe in the, 90s or early 2000s? I mean, it's some time later, but nonetheless, it's Berklee and you're surrounded in this musical world. It's like gotta feel like such a privilege.
It is. It is. All the people that you meet, and the school is so international and diverse now, even more than it ever has been. So I learn as much from my students as from my colleagues. So I've picked up a lot on Afro-Caribbean music, on Indian music, on uh, Korean music, uh, different parts of South American cultures. It's amazing.
So
Um,
you're always listening to new stuff.
yeah, yeah, and the courses I teach now are the late composition, jazz composition courses. So I get the students who are definitely more serious, and who are, as a composition class, you're pulling in ideas and mixing them up in your own individual way, and so I'm looking at a score that somebody is showing me, and well, how is this organized, and start talking about their own background and how they're bringing stuff into it. Um, People using their imagination and putting things together in a way that I hadn't thought of, and oh, I'm going to steal that. That's good.
It
Yeah.
sounds like you're just as inspired now as you were, when you were younger.
Probably even more so, I'd say. Yeah.
That was beautiful. So I always think about jazz as you have to kind of catch the jazz bug. Uh, something happens to us, we hear a recording or go to a certain concert or a number of other things. Do you remember what it was that made you go, okay, what is this? I need to learn more.
hmm Um, I can cite two different things. First
Sure.
was a concert. I was in high school, and my high school band director took a bunch of us to hear Stan Kenton band play, and they were doing their things. This is
Did they do Malagueño or
they
right?
might have, but
23
they said,
degrees.
"Here's that rainy day," which is what they would open up concerts with, and it starts very, very quiet, and then it gets to its climax, and it's just like a wall of sound, and it's ultra dramatic, and like, oh wow, that's cool. So then I started exploring the big bands, and locked onto Kenton and Buddy Rich, uh, Count Basie, and it just went on from there. And then the other thing that uh, really drew me into jazz was the early fusion era. So like miles of late '60s, early '70s. Um, Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Billy Cobham's band, um, a bunch of those, Weather Report. Um, so that's sort of like, okay, because I was like playing in rock bands, also Chicago type bands,
Sure.
and so here's taking some of that and combining it with the jazz stuff in a really modern way.
Do you
Uh,
separate, like, do you kind of separate, like, for you, is it almost, I know obviously they're like, it must feel like two different worlds when you take like the big band stuff and then take like a quartet or something or trio. Like, when you're listening, is it all music for you, or is it you kind of separate it in a sense because, the big band is such a huge sound with so many more instruments?
hmm um, well, I'm primarily a writer. I'm a writer who plays. Uh, um, so what I listen to more than anything, and I think what I've always instinctually listened to is the music, more than the performance. I mean, I get off on great performances, but after I've listened to it a few times, it's, yeah, okay, that's great, and move on. But I can listen to a great composition over and over and over and over and over and over again, and still get the same thrill out of it.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. Well, being a young musician in this business is challenging, and it's probably even harder now than it was in earlier years. So, are there any misconceptions out there, young musicians might have about being a jazz musician, you think, and things they should know if they want to get into this business?
mhm. It may be harder now to get into the business, but at the same time, there's more tools for getting in on the ground level. Um, you know, way back, there was no such thing as mailing lists. Uh, um, I think that made of the first mailing lists I ever encountered were like probably in the late '70s, early '80s. Um, and then of course email and now social media. So in some ways, certain parts of the business are more difficult. Certain parts of the business are easier. So it's just different. I think it'd probably be a better way of putting it. So, um, and I'm not so sure it's a misconception, but just a lack of knowing what you need to do. Um, so yeah, these days, in a certain way, you've always had to do this, but it's even more important now. You have to have some sort of business sense. You need to have
Unquestionably.
you need to have marketing sense also. Knowing your market, knowing your demographics, and where are they, and how can you get there. Um, uh, having a business plan, being able to talk to people. That's another thing. You got to have networking chops more now than you used to, I think.
Sure. And you say I mean, obviously you play, but composition is your main bag, let's say. When do you feel like you've sort of found your voice as a composer? Was there a certain piece of music you wrote, or maybe you heard someone play something you wrote where you felt like I've come into my own now, and maybe gain that confidence that people are looking for to keep pushing?
Um, in a way, I've always been a composer of some sort. Even when I remember as a little kid going to visit my grandparents, and my mother's piano was there at the time, and she would show me stuff, and I picked up on it pretty fast. But then I would I would simulate thunderstorms on the piano, banging on it, but they wouldn't stop me. They let me let my imagination go, and I think that was a big part of it. Um, But then when I actually got to the point where I could start writing stuff down, there were opportunities to hear what I'd written, um, and that started in late high school.
When you hear it come to life, when you write
When
down.
you actually hear it come to life. Uh, and I don't know, I was never discouraged. If something didn't go right, okay, well, let me pick it apart. Why didn't that work? And what do I need to learn to make it work? Um,
It's hard that, so many people get discouraged, but you never got discouraged. Like, that sounds great. That's amazing.
yeah, well, my parents didn't stop me from banging on the piano. Another thing, I remember one time, this is when I was a student at Berklee, I had put together a rehearsal big band and played all stuff that I wrote. I would write a regular full chart about every 2 weeks. And in the off weeks, I did like avant-garde experiments with them, and everybody got into it. But then we did a concert at the end of that school year, and uh, so going through the concert, I'm like all involved with making sure everything comes in right and conducting and blah 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 blah. I I hadn't listened while all that was going on, so I get back home that night and turn on the tape and go like, "Whoa, that's exactly the way I heard it." And it's like, "Wow," and I think that probably contributed quite a bit to oh, I got to keep doing this.
No, you get a high from it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Are you still doing the Afro Pop ensemble at Berkeley?
I did it for maybe 30 years. But in the late teens, interest in it started to wane a little bit, and
Really?
uh, I well, it got very hard to populate the course.
Wow.
Um, so another guy took it over, and what I did is I started almost doing the same thing, but I called it the Jazz Composition Workshop.
Oh, okay.
Um, Jazz Comp Fusion Jazz Comp Fusion Workshop. And so what I did is instead I approached it from a compositional standpoint. We come in and all right, somebody come up with an idea. So this is more of the pop rock way of putting music together.
We had two
Okay.
bass players, I think, when I was in it.
Oh, did it? Well, cool.
I thought, yeah, well, and definitely there were two drummers.
Mhm. I used two drummers a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, two drummers, three guitar players, uh, two bass players.
Horn?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. How many
wild.
horn players that semester?
That was wild.
Yeah, yeah. But it's sort of like uh, getting everybody to listen and make sure what they were playing, fit in with the groove and with what was going on, energy wise. So we didn't use written music that much, for head, but there was a lot of improvisation.
Yeah, we never had one piece of music ever. I
Mm.
remember. It was,
Probably did, maybe for the horn players, but
oh, maybe for the, yeah, exactly.
um, and we played covers, but the original stuff was okay. You start, okay. You put something with that, and so everybody is like contributing and coming up with a nice piece of music. And
It's incredible how that music used to happen, and then you would give us the final, we called the final exam at the recital.
yeah, yeah, and
Someone
that was
starts.
okay. Nobody knew what was going to happen until it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
you get nervous for the students when that would happen, or you would,
No, no. At that point, everybody kind of knew what to do. So
yeah,
there's a lot of really good musicians. Some of them are fairly well known now that went through that ensemble.
yeah, yeah. No,
Like,
it was so much fun. I remember I really enjoyed. That was probably one of my best experiences at Berkeley, I would say.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I enjoyed it.
let's let's talk a little bit about you know, growth as a musician and composer because you've been in this business for a long time, you've been teaching for a long time. Sometimes we have to unlearn something. Maybe one of our mentors taught us something, or maybe we heard something, and in order to get to the next place, we had to let go of some part of our musical vocabulary. Is um, have you ever had to let go of something that, if not, you would not have been able to move forward?
Hmm. Ah, I
This is why I call it the rabbit hole sessions. You have to go into the rabbit hole to
the
find the
rabbit hole
answer.
session. You have to go into the rabbit hole to find the answer. Well, I guess I'm a pack rat, and also a pack rat with ideas. I never really let go, but I definitely will put something in the toolbox that will stay there for a long time, maybe never to appear again. But um, yeah, maybe some misconceptions that I have. You go through school and you learn all this theory and structure, um, but when it comes to actually creating your own music, um, um, there are no rules to it.
Yeah, there's no
And
time for all that structure in the moment, right? It's like there's no
well, I
time.
mean, you've got to not be constrained by the the way things have been done in the past that you've been taught. So yeah, maybe that's something that I learned to let go of is okay. This doesn't fit with this chord, but kind of sounds cool. So it's
I
like,
no, I think it's such a valid thing because for me like I have to think about a lot of the ideas that I met. John was my mentor for 4 years. I had to let go of a lot that he taught me. Otherwise, I would never
mm,
be able to, be where I am today. So,
mm,
but I mean, that's not to say that he didn't teach me so many valuable things. That sort of so it's I definitely think that growth and letting go of things is important. Let me ask you this: when it comes to inspiration, we can get writer's block. We have stagnation when we're writing or composing, and sometimes we need to kind of go into the toolbox and maybe listen to something, or even if we didn't mean to, we can listen to something. Is there something that never fails to inspire you to this day that you've been listening to, just going back and back?
oh yeah, there's certain albums that there's always something to learn from. In all different kinds of genres too. So I'm not limited to only listening to jazz. I
Sure.
think most jazz players are that way. Classical pop rock, uh, African music, uh, different kinds of world music, uh, um, 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 Afro Latin music. Um, I I don't often have writer's block. Um, for a couple of reasons I learned that when I'm stuck, uh, I analyze what I already have, and the answer is usually there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I need to do more of this. Okay, that fits, or that doesn't fit. But if I put this in between, then it fits. Um, I do know when it's time to get up from the piano or the computer and go take a walk or a shower or whatever, and leave it alone. And then a lot of times ideas will come. Sometimes the ideas will come from listening to other music as well. So, and then there's another thing that helped me. I was fortunate enough to be able to study with Bob Brookmeyer for a while. I took from him privately, not through any school. So I had to drive 2.5 hours up to his house in New Hampshire, and
2.5 hours?
2.5 hours up there, 4 hour lesson, 2.5 hours back. So it's
Oh
like,
my God.
but there's me before studying with him and me after studying with him.
And
Um,
wow.
and he has a whole lot of series of exercises. In the short run, they're meant to like make you start thinking in different ways. Um, but in the long run, okay, I need to come up with something because I have something is due in 3 weeks. So try one of these exercises, and that'll generate some ideas that you can then expand. One of his most famous exercises is called the white note exercise. Um, so you have to compose, and you're supposed to do this exercise on a piece of paper without any reference. No instruments, maybe sitting on a bench outside or something like that. Um, Take one motif and develop it for an entire page with the constraints of it has to only use the white notes between middle C and an octave higher. And that all is done over a C pedal. So you start learning the power of re, the power of la, the power of fa, all these different things ending here and of course motivic development schemes. That's what that's all about. Knowing when to pause, knowing when to move, how long to pause, how many times to repeat, and with mild development or radical development. So that's one of his most famous exercises. Ask almost any student of his, and they'll tell you about it. Oh
No,
yeah.
that sounds so cool. Bob, it's such a pleasure to reconnect with you after, almost 2 decades. And, it's, I greatly appreciate you being a teacher at Berklee when I was there. And, uh, it was always something I'll certainly remember. And where can everybody find you on social media or email or website? Where's all that good stuff? Can you share that
Well,
with us?
I am on Facebook. I don't look at it that often anymore. It's kind of overwhelming at this point. I have that too many connections, and it just is. In one day I'll get like 100 notifications,
Oh
and
my
it's
God. Yeah, of course.
I keep up
So
with it.
Facebook, but you may not hear back from him right away.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's how we connected. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate it. I thank you, man.
mhm. um, I also have some stuff up on Bandcamp. Just search for my name.
Okay. So everyone can search you and everyone will know how to spell your name and everything. But yeah, no, this was great. Thank you so much.
Let me mention one other one.
Oh, sure.
That is, I've been working with an organization called Jazz Composers Present, um, and it's a platform where they do these kind of podcast type things, where they interview or have sessions of different kinds. Um, with all different kinds of jazz composers. So you have everybody from somebody like me all the way up to like a Jim McNeely or a Michael Abene, um, um, Darcy James Argue.
Hmm.
Um, and so I've been doing stuff with them. I just yesterday I did another one. It's called a foundational focus geared towards educational institutions, where I'm talking about using imitative counterpoint in jazz. So stuff like that.
Well, that's really cool. So yeah, no, that's another place for people to check out some things too.
And it's great to see you again.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
There's you don't remember every student's name, but I definitely remember your name as soon as you messaged me. So it's like, oh, I
Well,
got
you know what? I was a nice 18-year-old boy who was just trying to do the right thing and play the correct notes. So
you had a spirit, so it's like,
thanks,
so yeah,
man.
very, very cool to hear from you again. I'm glad you're doing so well.
Thank you, man.